Thank you for being here. My talk from today, Beyond Compliance, Rethinking Legal Accountability in Cybersecurity. But before I start our discussion, let me tackle a very important question. Who am I? My name is Andreea Focsa and I'm a security consultant at Six Traction. I hold a bachelor degree in international European law and a master degree in public international law. As a result, I have worked in various fields of laws, human rights, EU law, intellectual property, and everything else you can think about. If you wonder, how did I end up in cybersecurity? Well, I wonder the same. Many winters ago, I ended up working in an NGO in South Africa. Great mission, great purpose. But something was missing. Safeguards regarding data protection. Obviously, I knew why we needed them, but I had no idea how to implement the how. Later, I changed jobs, changed organization, embraced compliance. I dig deeper into the why, but I still had no clue about the how. And it was driving me nuts. And that's pretty much the short story of how I ended in my first cybersecurity role. Okay. Compliance, such it is. Legal accountability, such a buzzword, isn't it? Let me start by asking you, and feel free to raise your hand. How many of you ever felt like compliance has become more about ticking a box and less about security? Exactly. And that's what we have built. Endless checklists, endless audits, and surprise, surprise, breaches are still happening. That's why I'm here today. I want to talk about how EU cybersecurity law, through the General Data Protection Regulation, through NIS2, through DORA, is moving us fundamentally beyond compliance. It's not about a checklist anymore. It's about how we reason about risks and how we're able to justify them. Traditionally, compliance means control catalogs, predefined best practices. The idea is quite simple. You implement each and every control from a list, and you're compliant. And by extension, you are safe. And let's be honest, who doesn't like a little safe place? But can we really reduce security to a list? No, definitely no. The environment is changing way too fast for that. Technologies evolve, threat actors adapt, dependencies shift. And that's why the legal instruments such as GDPR, NIS2, DORA are trying to change. It's not about a checklist anymore. It's about making us thinking why you implemented those measures in the first place. Of course, we can keep talking and talking, we can agree or disagree, but what the law actually demands. Justify how you think, not only what you do. And Article 5, Section 2 of GDPR introduces accountability. Controllers must not only comply, but also demonstrate compliance. Article 24 and 32 introduce proportionality. Appropriate measures based on appropriate risks. Article 35 regarding data processing impact assessments institutionalizes forward-looking assessments. NIS2 goes a little bit further. Executive bodies are now explicitly accountable for approving and overseeing cybersecurity risks. And DORA in the financial sector introduces resilience testing and third-party oversight, showing once again that the risk goes beyond the organization itself. The EU has not defined risk. It has legalized risk reasoning. Law now doesn't care about ticking a box anymore. It cares about how we reason about risks. Now, let's go to my favorite part of this model. I would say the heart, the risk proportionality accountability loop. All of these three legal instruments mentioned, GDPR, NIS2, DORA, encode the same living cycle. Identify risk, respond proportionately, and demonstrate justification. Bear in mind, this is a continuous process. If the cadence of the IT change outruns the cadence of the risk evaluation, proportionality becomes stale, and accountability fails, not in substance, but in time. And then the loop is broken, and we basically back at square one. This is why NIS2 requires a board-level oversight. This is why DORA enforces resilience testing, to make sure that this loop keeps going. Think of it this way. The law actually acknowledges the current reality. Security is not a static state. Security is a moving reef of adaptation. It follows that accountability is not about perfection. It was never about perfection. It will never be about perfection. Accountability is about making sure that this loop keeps going. Now, where does this loop actually live in? It actually lives between IT and security. IT was designed to enable. It values speed, scalability, uptime. Security was designed to constrain. It values assurances, control, containment. These two domains share the same infrastructure, but not the same incentives. However, the new EU model requires that these logics reconcile. It's not something easy to do. Keep in mind that every deployment, every configuration, every cloud integration is now an act of proportionality. Balancing operational agility against risk exposure. If you cannot trace why a decision was made and when was the last time this decision was reassessed, you are procedurally compliant, but substantively negligent. Ask yourself, can we defend the logic of our last security trade-off? Not the outcome, but the reasoning. And once you have the answer, you'll realize that's how accountability works in practice. Let's go a little bit deeper. The unknown, the uncertain. Some of the most significant failures can never be predicted. And the EU model recognizes this. And the deep uncertainty, accountability shifts from prediction to preparedness. The question is no longer, did you predict for this event? The question is now, did we design for imperfection? Did you learn how to adapt fast? GDPR institutionalizes anticipatory thinking through the data processing impact assessments. NIS2 mandates living management functions. DORA enforces resilient testing. And why is that? Well, the answer to the question is quite simple. Because in an independent system, no one can be perfectly right, but everyone must be resilient to being wrong. In short, adequacy evolves with knowledge. Decision must be made all the time, not just at the time of certification. Law shifts. Now we have prediction, preparedness, and adaptation. Let's move forward. Strategic risks of this model. Like any other model, like any other system, this can be misused. Appropriate and proportionate can become the equivalent of doing the bare minimum, or what I like to call accountability minimalism. Or, under DORA, duties can be easily diffused and until everyone is careful and nobody takes responsibility. The solution obviously is no more prescription. That's something that lives in the past. We should completely forget about that. The solution is actually better reasoning, recording counterfactuals, defining reevaluation thresholds, and looping incidents lessons back into design. In other words, accountability must be lived. Now that we got so far, what beyond compliance really means? Of course, it's not about exceeding legal requirements, if it was that easy. It's about meeting them through thinking accountability. Show that your governance keep that reasoning current. Make what is measure for this risk at this moment, and how will we know when that answer has changed the guiding question of your security culture? This is how accountability becomes a living method of justification. And now that we're almost at the end of this talk, I will conclude by saying that GDPR, NIS2, DORA collectively replace prescriptive checklists with a new model of risk management. They evaluate not just what you did, but how you think about it. If accountability becomes a merely paperwork exercise, the model will fail. We'll have to start all over again, and that's not fun. But if it becomes a method of decision-making, incorporating legal, technical, and managerial judgment, it becomes the foundation for a durable security. I will repeat one more time. Accountability must be lived. We cannot let the loop risk proportionately accountability be broken. And this is the end of my talk. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Well, I can imagine that there are questions. It was a very fast question. I like it. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I also went from law to cybersecurity, so I get where you're coming from. And I feel like the law has never really been about making lists. So because you say, oh, it went from lists to a more risk-based dynamic approach, but isn't the problem that people feel the constant desire to sort of distort the law by making lists? And isn't the real question then more, how can we train people to interpret the law well and not interpret it as we need to make more lists and more tick the boxes?
No, you're actually right. People have a tendency to choose the easy way. And the easy way in this case was to make list and follow that list. We have to change that. We need to start thinking how we reason about risk, why did we choose those controls, and so on. It's more about a shift in mentality of how people choose to read the law. If it wasn't an easy answer. It's something I still have to think about. I mean, after all, we have IT and security, and they're not the best friends, let's say that. we still have to find a way to reconcile them, to make them work together, and then this model will come to life.
Other questions?
Thank you for your talk. I was curious if there is a way to see where or which companies comply with the law. For example, as to make a decision of where I get my products from or something like that. Like, if I try to look for like, okay, what's a good company that cares about my data and how it's managed? I don't know where to look for it. So do you know of any resources like that?
I will have to think about it, so please feel free to approach me during the break. Yes?
So nice. Other questions? Yes.
Thank you. I notice a current trend that in our organization we're shifting towards an in-control framework, which is basically putting all the laws together and all the lists and everything. How does that relate to what you're proposing in your model?
I'm basically saying to ditch the list and start thinking about the why. Like I said, this is not an easy task. It's about a shift in mentality. We need to choose the hard way.
Can you elaborate a bit? I mean, how can I convince the managers and say, let's ditch the list?
That's probably the toughest part of this, because I said this and I will keep saying it. Managers would rather choose the easy way of just ticking a box and call ourselves compliant. You can also ask yourself, when is the last time your organization discussed not only controls, but also what's going behind those controls? And once you're able to answer that question, you'll realize that that's the maturity level this model expects. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Hello, thank you for your talk. I want to get you into trouble now. I want to ask you, you said that the IT and the security teams, they have trouble working together. So who do you think has the biggest problem? It's the IT people, the security people, or maybe the management?
I would say the management. Let's blame it on management.
Okay. Thank you.
I should really have a talk next year about management because I feel...
Hi. Thanks for your talk. So I like what you proposed, actually, to move to the why, moving away from the checklist. But with that comes the underlying subjectivity layer. So are there any points of view, or how would you really tackle that, huge layer or huge stack of subjectivity that comes along when you also propose this shift?
Can you repeat your question?
Yeah, my question is, when you propose moving away from the checklist to the why, right, with that scenario, we also end up having a lot of subjectivity that comes into the process, and it really differs from person to person. So how do you really tackle that aspect of dealing with these various points of view and that subjectivity that comes forth in this transition that you're proposing?
There's always going to be some kind of subjectivity, whether we like it or not. Even when interpreting the law, there's different kinds of interpretation. That's not something that can be changed overnight. After all, everyone has their own opinion. But I'm gonna give you the most basic answer, and that is communication. That is collaboration. That's what we're supposed to do. We communicate until we can reach a common agreement.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions? Nice. Oh, yes. We have time.
So I feel in our company, departments are having variances of views on compliance. And I know that specifically some programming teams think it's a paper tape burden. So you say, oh, this is the importance. You go into discussion, try to convince them. But they are going to find elephant paths around it. And then you have a problem. Did you encounter something like this? And do you have tips to cope with that?
Maybe we should first start on making everyone from an organization aware about what accountability really means. For some people, accountability or compliance is really just ticking a box. It's nothing more. You just follow a list and we're doing a great job. For other people, including myself, I see this accountability as a living method of justification. I want to go beyond. I want that each control to have a clear reasoning of why it was implemented. That's pretty much, in my opinion, the way to get durable security. And at the same time, it's a great way to keep the same pace as the pace that digital transformation has. So we should start with awareness.
Okay, maybe a last question that has rose? No? Thank you.